No! Video games.
What up, dudes? Matt here from YoVideogames with my continuing coverage of E3 2017 hands-on impressions. Today, I'm going to be talking about something you probably never thought you'd hear me giving impressions on, and that is a VR title. So a little backstory. I'm not really the biggest fan of VR in general. I don't really feel that it's made its strong stance as a necessary or revolutionary game-changing peripheral yet. The way I look at it right now, it's kind of like the new generation or the new era version of a Sega CD. It costs about as much as a console does, for at least for PSVR, and the games that support it are mostly tech demo-y right now. There's Resident Evil 7, but that game's good on its own. VR maybe adds a little bit to it from when I've played, well, the demos and the final version of RE7 VR, and it's nice, but I feel that the game's strong enough on its own that VR, while it does add, I guess, a little bit of scare factor, it doesn't necessarily make the game so much better. And that's just me. And yeah, a lot of other VR games really haven't proven themselves as really some super viable, necessary thing that I think some of the more enthusiast fans would have you believe. And I think that's reflective right now in E3 coming and going and very little VR talk. There was some ports from Bethesda, which was kind of cool, and the Doom VR was kind of neat, but even Sony seemed to take sort of a backseat to VR, and it really just wasn't talked about, wasn't seen a lot on the show floor. And for me, the best experience I ever had in VR was actually the EA Star Wars Battlefront Rogue One VR demo level. It was just one level. And a flight sim seemed like such a good idea for VR. It really actually seemed to be natural, like a supernatural fit for it. So, of the only VR games at the show, the only one that I actually played was Ace Combat 7 VR. Now, you could play it with or without VR, but I opted, fuck it, while I'm here, might as well do it in VR. They were nice enough to offer seats for the VR stations at Namco's booth, and I got to try it out, and I gotta say, I was impressed. I had a really good time. Initially, I felt a little kind of, not disheartened, but when you're taking off, it's cool, but at the same time, there's a little bit of disappointment because the seat's not moving. Like if it was a motion sensor seat, this thing would be fucking amazing. But as it was, I was just sitting in a normal, like, standard seat, and it didn't move or rumble when the plane took off. Which, obviously you can't expect that, but man, would that have made this experience, like, perfect. But it was actually pretty cool. Like, actually, as you're, after the initial takeoff from the aircraft carrier, and you're climbing up into the clouds, you can look around and you kind of get that sort of crazy feeling you get when you look out the window of a plane taking off. And I really enjoyed that. The demo was basically a perfect length for showing it off. You basically got up there, flew around a little bit. You had 2 different waves of enemies, and then you're supposed to return home, and then like a larger wave of drone aircraft attacks, and you have to take all of them out within a certain amount of time. And this is like the perfect fit for VR. The ability to look around the cockpit, look out the sides of the windows, and then kind of see just the scale of the world below you and the clouds, and it all works really, really fucking well. Like, this is what VR is made for. I know Ace Combat 7's kind of suffered a longer delay. I think it was supposed to be out this year, and then I think it's got pushed to next year, but it's all good. I will say that, again, there is a little bit of problem with the fact that I'm assuming I was playing on a PS4 Pro, but, if I was playing a vanilla, that would be weird, but, there's still the problem of, when you put the goggles on and you're looking around, I'm like, my god, there's like no anti-aliasing at all in the game. It's got like that sort of Nintendo defiance to aliasing, so everything has a really rough, jagged edges look on anything that's like a straight line or anything like a hard surface. The edge of a hard surface's edges are really nasty. There's an inherent occasional blurriness, which kind of seems to be VR's version of 3D glasses at the theaters being too dark. You know how, like, unless a theater is properly optimized or properly tuned, you generally get this sort of darker image when you're watching 3D movies. And the problem with video games in VR, I feel, has been that there's a sort of an inherent problem with the quality of clarity. So you get a little bit of blurriness inherent to VR, and that's because, one, the PSVR is like the cheapest possible fucking VR headset on the market, next to the Samsung thing for phones. Of course, better than that, yes, but and you need these like 4K or 8K lenses inside the VR if you really want to get like the best possible clear experience, and that's not economically feasible right now. So there's a little bit of an inherent flaw there, and that is that because your eyeballs are like directly in the fucking like lenses of VR glasses, you need the absolute highest definition, and then of course you need to make sure that your game can run with all kinds of super aliasing and shadowing, and to do that you're going to need super power. You're going to need to be rendering shit really fast and really powerful. So basically, I think at the end of the day, VR's problem is that it's being rushed a little bit, and we can get some games to market and they run well, and some of them actually play just fine, but they definitely take a bit of a step back visually. And the problem with that is that the whole point of VR is to immerse you. Immersion! I'm there! I'm really sitting inside this creepy house, even though I can't reach out and feel anything, smell anything, or anything like that, and everything has this weird fucking jagged edges everywhere, and there's a little bit of inherent blurriness that I'm used to, but immersion! So I think that's a problem with VR, is that because it's being rushed out, and it's being used on consoles that aren't really up to the task of rendering things as clearly as they need to be, you're losing a bit of the whole point of fucking VR, because you are going to have these issues of blurriness and jaggedness. And most of this stuff is related specifically to PSVR, because I know the fucking Vive people are chomping at the bit. They're clacking on their keyboards right now, talking about how much better the Vive is, and I'm only going at this from a PSVR experience, and that's kind of true. I've used Oculus, I've used Samsung, and I've used PSVR. I've not used the Vive. Maybe the Vive negates this problem, but again, from my understanding, the Vive, you need a very powerful rig to run it. You also need to have installed cameras to do the 3D spatial stuff. You need to rig like all these cameras around a room to really make use of it. So that's kind of like just an inherent flaw I feel with VR right now. It's cool, don't get me wrong, but it's not ready for mass consumer appeal. And the reason why we're not getting these big, deep, meaty games is because there isn't the mass consumer appeal there. The audience is not big enough right now to warrant such resources and development time and costs being sunk into these big experiences. So I really wish people would do more of games like Ace Combat 7. I really wish, with all the fucking money those guys have at EA and Star Wars / Disney, I wish they would make a fucking Rogue Squadron VR, because that would be perfect for it. And yeah, they could definitely afford it, and it would probably sell at least enough to make its money back on PSVR with the amount of units that have been sold. And of course, you know, you could use the Oculus and Vive as well. So it's just one of those things where, yeah, this turned into kind of a bit of a VR rant, but I don't really feel that the technology is there. But I will say this. If you are a VR owner and you do like the VR, keep an eye out for Ace Combat 7. It's a really good use of it. It's really fun. You get a little bit of this sort of like wooziness kind of rush when you do actually look out the windows or whatever. Maybe do your barrel rolls, because how could I get away without referencing that fucking thing? But there you go. It's definitely worth it. It's probably the only VR title I'm excited for at this moment that's yet to come out, but it's still good. It's still a lot of fun, and it's still fucking worth playing. So I hope you guys who do have VR do look into this title. I think it's well worth your time. So that's about all I got to say on Ace Combat 7. I know it was mostly a VR rant, but sue me, that's just kind of the nature of the beast. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll see you on the channel. Later, dudes!